AITA for reporting my coworker for secretly tracking my work schedule and calling me out on my breaks. This whole situation has completely flipped the mood at work, and now I'm getting the cold shoulder from several coworkers. I, 28F, work as a customer service rep at a mid-sized tech company. I've been here for about 4 years. It's not my dream job, but the pay is decent, and I've worked hard to earn a level of autonomy that wasn't easy to come by. A little background. We have a hybrid work model where we rotate between remote and in-office weeks. My manager, Lisa, is super chill as long as the metrics are met. That means emails answered, customer issues resolved, response time, etc. She doesn't micromanage, which is honestly the only reason I've stayed this long. Enter Darren, 33M, who joined our team about 7 months ago. Darren is intense, always looking to optimize things, always asking for process flowcharts, try to apply Six Sigma stuff to customer service. No one asked him to do this, mind you. He also has this habit of making passive-aggressive remarks like, "Some of us just work differently," or "I wish I had time for a second coffee break." At first, I brushed it off. I figured he was just one of those overly ambitious types, trying to prove himself. But then it started getting personal. About 2 months ago, Darren started making weird comments during team meetings, asking vague questions like, "How are we tracking break times against productivity?" Or "Is there a policy on how long someone can be unavailable on Slack during core hours?" These were very obviously directed at me, since I'm one of the few people who actually take short screen breaks every couple of hours. I have a mild form of vertigo that flares up if I stare at screens too long. It's not severe, but I've got a doctor's note on file, and I've worked out a schedule with Lisa that includes 10-minute off-screen breaks every 90 minutes or so. It keeps me productive and avoids triggering headaches or dizziness. Lisa knows this. HR knows this. No one's had an issue. Until Darren. Last week, he finally crossed a serious line. Lisa was out sick, and during a team meeting, Darren presented a little side project he'd been working on. He shared his screen, and to everyone's shock, he had a literal spreadsheet with names, timestamps, and notes. I was stunned. He had tracked when everyone on the team was away on Slack, how long it lasted, and added his own snarky comments like consistently 10:30 to 10:50 away every day next to my name. It wasn't just me, but I was clearly the focus. A couple of others were listed, but he'd written things like just 5 minutes or only once a day. For me, there were red highlighted boxes and question marks. He ended it by saying, "I just thought it would be useful for transparency and fairness." The whole team was silent. One guy laughed awkwardly, thinking it was a joke, but Darren just stared dead serious. I was completely blindsided. I didn't even know this kind of tracking was possible without some serious monitoring tools. He said he did it manually, using Slack statuses and screen captures. Which what? I didn't say much in the meeting, just kind of nodded and kept my camera off for the rest of it. But afterward, I reported it to Lisa and HR. I told them he'd been surveilling me and possibly others, compiling data without consent, and using it in an attempt to shame or single me out. HR took it seriously. There's a strict privacy clause in our employee agreement, and Darren had definitely crossed a line. The fallout was quick. Darren got called into HR, and then Lisa told us he was on administrative leave pending investigation. Now here's where I might be the asshole. Since he's been gone, I've gotten weird vibes from several coworkers. One, who I was friendly with, said I overreacted and should have just talked to Darren privately. Another said it was obvious he was just trying to impress management. A third said, "Honestly, your breaks do stand out. It's not crazy he noticed." I'm starting to feel like I nuked this guy's career over something that maybe wasn't meant to be malicious. Maybe he really thought he was helping. Maybe I could have just clarified things to him instead of going nuclear. But at the same time, it felt humiliating and invasive. I had no idea I was being monitored like that. I didn't go to HR to get him fired. I went because I felt violated, and because if someone had done that to them, they'd probably be upset too. Now I'm being treated like I'm overdramatic, like I can't take a little scrutiny. I didn't yell or demand anything. I just reported something I thought was inappropriate. But maybe it made a bigger deal than it needed to be. Maybe I should have pulled him aside first. But the fact that he built a whole spreadsheet with red flags and tried to present it in front of the whole team feels beyond the pale. So, AITA for reporting my coworker instead of talking to him first? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for refusing to let my brother move into my late father's house, even though it was left to both of us. My dad passed away a year ago. He wasn't the warmest man in the world, but he wasn't cruel either. Just distant. Growing up, he was all about work and routines. He'd wake up at 5 a.m., make himself one black coffee, go on a 3-mile walk, and then head off to his job at the post office, where he worked for over 30 years. He wasn't very emotional. He believed in discipline, savings, hard work, and loyalty to family, though he had a weird way of showing that last one. When my parents divorced, I was 16 and my brother Jason was 11. Dad fought hard for custody, which surprised everyone. But then, when he got it, he barely engaged with us emotionally. He provided everything material: new shoes, tuition, health insurance, but the emotional support was zero. Jason took it harder than I did. I was older, already pulling away, but Jason was still just a kid, and I watched him slowly unravel over the years. Jason's life went a very different route from mine. I went to college, got a degree in engineering, worked for a few startups, and eventually settled in a stable job with a good company. Jason dropped out of high school, got into drugs, theft, even spent a little time in jail for a breaking and entering charge in his early 20s. He's 32 now. I'm 37. We weren't very close after high school. Every time he got clean, he'd relapse. I wanted to help, and I did help financially, emotionally, but it always ended with burned bridges and stolen wallets. At one point, I let him crash with me after a breakup. 2 weeks later, I came home from work and found my PlayStation, my watch, and a couple hundred in cash gone. He denied it, then admitted it, then blamed me for making him feel small. That was the last time I let him stay with me. When our dad died, we were both shocked to learn that he'd left the house to us jointly, 50-50ths. No conditions, just our names on the deed. It was a modest 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, fully paid off. It's not in a flashy city or anything, but it's in a good area with rising property value. I assumed we'd sell it and split the profits. Easy. But Jason had other ideas. He told me he wanted to move in and start fresh. He said he was finally clean again and ready to rebuild his life. He's working part-time as a dishwasher and going to NA meetings, and I genuinely want to believe he's serious. But this has happened before, at least 5 times. The "I'm clean now, I've changed, I need a new start" speech is practically scripted at this point. I said no. I told him I didn't want to co-own a house with someone who has a long history of substance abuse, especially when that house is worth something and I have a family to think about. My wife and I are expecting our first baby in September. I suggested we sell it, split the cash, and he could use his share to rent a place or do whatever he needed to get back on track. He flipped out, called me selfish, said our dad would have wanted him to have a home, that I'm hoarding the only good thing we have left from our family. He accused me of giving up on him and turning my back on my only brother. He even tried guilt-tripping me with memories from when we were kids, like how I used to make him breakfast before school or let him sleep in my room during storms. I stuck to my decision. I offered to buy him out of his share at full market value, with no shady deductions or fees. He refused, said he'd never sell, and if I didn't let him move in, he'd go there anyway. I warned him that if he entered the property without my agreement, I'd involve the police. Now, he's made it a whole drama. He's telling extended family that I'm screwing him over, that I've turned into a corporate robot, and that I care more about money than blood. Some of them are on his side. My aunt, our mom's sister, called me to say I'm choosing capitalism over compassion. She said everyone deserves a second chance, and that maybe if Jason had stability, he wouldn't keep slipping. I get it. I do. He's family. He's had a rough life. But I also can't ignore the years of chaos he's brought into mine. I can't trust him not to destroy the house, bring in sketchy people, fall off the wagon, or just refuse to leave when things inevitably fall apart again. And I especially can't have him showing up at family gatherings drunk or high around my future kid. I've seen that story. I've lived it. He's now threatening to sue me to force a partition sale, which would mean the court orders us to sell the house and split it. I told him I already offered that option, and he turned it down. He said he wanted to do it his way. My wife is supportive, but even she's starting to wonder if I should just cave and let him stay for 6 months. But I know him. Once he's in, I'll never get him out. And I'll be spending the next year juggling lawyers, police calls, and a newborn. I just can't. So here I am, stuck between protecting my peace and being the good brother. I've tried to be patient, fair, even generous. But maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I've let my frustration with his past blind me to who he's trying to become now. AITA for refusing to let my brother move into the house, even though it's technically half his. AITA for refusing to let my brother move back into our childhood home after he gave it to me. AITA for refusing to let my older brother move back into the house he signed over to me, even though he says he has nowhere else to go. Some background. I, 29M, inherited our childhood home 3 years ago from my brother, 34M, who voluntarily signed the deed over to me after moving across the country for a job opportunity. At the time, he was adamant he'd never come back and wanted nothing to do with the place. He even called it a deadweight from the past. I wasn't expecting the house. It was originally owned by our parents, who passed away within a year of each other. The will left it equally to both of us. My brother didn't want to deal with maintaining it or selling it, and said he'd rather just give it to me so I could do whatever I want with it. We went through all the legal channels, and he transferred full ownership to me. I've been living in it since, slowly renovating it and turning it into a home I love. Fast forward to about 6 months ago, my brother's life started to fall apart. He lost his job, broke up with his fiancée, and eventually got priced out of his apartment. He reached out to me, saying he wanted to come back home for a while. I was surprised, but told him I need to think about it. The thing is, our relationship has never been easy. He was the golden child growing up. Everything I did, he did better. He was louder, more charismatic, and my parents always seemed to favor him. I was quieter, more of an indoor kid. He teased me relentlessly back then, called me names, made fun of my interests, told people I was weird. I know that's normal sibling stuff to some people, but it stuck with me. Even as adults, we haven't been particularly close. Still, when he asked to stay with me, I did consider it. I didn't give him an immediate no, but I also remembered how he treated me, how little interest he showed in the house or in maintaining any real relationship after he moved. For 3 years, I heard from him maybe twice a year. No holiday calls, no check-ins, not even a how's the house coming along. When I told him I wasn't comfortable with him moving in, especially indefinitely, he got angry. He said, "I gave you that house. You'd have nothing if it weren't for me." He claims he only signed it over because he trusted me to take care of it and thought he'd always have a place to return if things went south. I told him I appreciated what he did back then, but that the house is mine now. He made a choice, and I've built my life around that choice. I put tens of thousands into renovations, poured time and sweat into making it my home. It's not a safety net he can yank whenever he wants. I offered to help him with first month's rent and a deposit if he found a place nearby. But he refused, said I was being ungrateful and selfish. The conversation got really heated, and he said things like, "I should have just sold the damn house," and "I should have known you'd turn into a greedy little loner." I ended the call after that. Now some extended family members are reaching out. Apparently he's been staying on a cousin's couch and telling everyone I stole the house out from under him, manipulated him into signing it over. That's not true. He made the offer. I even told him to think about it longer, and he insisted. No one was coerced. Our aunt messaged me yesterday and said, "It's not right to let families struggle when you have more than enough." I get that sentiment, but I don't think people understand the full history. I'm not some landlord hoarding extra property. This is my only home. I don't have a guest room, just a small office I work out of. I'm also not emotionally in a place where I want to live with someone who once bullied me, ignored me for years, and now suddenly demands space in my life because it's convenient for him. A friend told me it wouldn't hurt to let him stay just a few weeks, that maybe it could even repair the relationship. But I don't know if I want that relationship repaired. I've worked hard to create a peaceful space in my life, and every time I talk to him, it stirs up old feelings that I've spent years processing in therapy. But now I can't shake the guilt. He's still my brother. He's going through a rough time. And I do have a roof over my head thanks to a decision he made. But that decision was final, right? So, AITA for reporting my neighbor's dog to animal control after months of trying to be civil. Let me just say up front that I really didn't want to be that person. The one who escalates a neighborly issue to the authorities. I grew up in a small town where people settled things with a conversation and a handshake. But after everything that's happened over the last 8 months, I honestly don't know if I was in the wrong or if I just finally snapped. I live in a quiet, suburban neighborhood where most people keep to themselves but are friendly enough to wave or exchange small talk during yard work. I've been in this house for 5 years now. It's a small but cozy place with a fenced-in backyard and just enough space for my modest garden and my dog, Riley, a 10-year-old golden retriever who's a certified angel. About 8 months ago, a new neighbor moved in next door. Let's call him Jason. He seemed nice enough at first. Mid-30s, single, kind of awkward but polite. We chatted once or twice when he was moving in, and I even brought over banana bread as a welcome gesture. He thanked me, seemed grateful, and that was about the extent of our early interactions. Then, about a month in, Jason got a dog. A big, muscular pit bull mix named Diesel. Now, I have no problem with pit bulls in general. I've known plenty that were absolute sweethearts. But Diesel was not friendly. From day one, he would lunge at the fence if I was in my yard with Riley. Barking, growling, teeth bared. At first, I figured he was just adjusting, so I gave it time. But only got worse. Diesel started charging the shared fence anytime he heard movement. I couldn't garden without him throwing himself at it. I couldn't let Riley out without him getting harassed. Riley, bless his soul, would just ignore him or back off, tail low. It got to the point where Riley started hesitating to go outside, even for bathroom breaks. I had to escort him every time. I spoke to Jason about it. Nicely at first. I said I understood Diesel was still settling in, but the behavior was scaring my dog and making it hard for us to enjoy our yard. Jason brushed it off. He's just protective, he said. He'll get used to it. Weeks passed. Nothing changed. In fact, Diesel somehow got worse. He figured out how to jump high enough that his front paws would land on the top of the fence. It's a 6-foot wooden privacy fence, but he's huge, and it looked like he was trying to launch himself over it. I added a trellis topper and some decorative lattice to make it taller, but Diesel just started tearing at it. He cracked 2 panels from repeated impact. I had another talk with Jason. I showed him pictures of the damage, even a video I'd taken of Diesel hurling himself at the fence while I tried to calm Riley. Jason apologized this time. He's got a lot of energy. I'll try to walk him more. Try was the key word. If anything, Diesel got less exercise. He barked all day, especially when Jason was at work. I worked from home, and the constant noise became unbearable. I bought a white noise machine for my office and noise-canceling headphones. Still, I could hear Diesel's barking vibrating through the walls. Then came the incident that broke me. One evening around 7 p.m., I was outside with Riley. He was sniffing around, leash in hand, just in case. I was by the flower beds when I heard the crash. Before I could process it, Diesel was in my yard. He'd busted through a loose fence panel. He charged at Riley so fast, I barely had time to react. Riley bolted, yelping, and I screamed. Diesel didn't go for me, but he was entirely focused on Riley. I don't know if he meant to attack or just scare him, but it didn't matter. It was terrifying. I got between them and used a rake to block Diesel off until Jason came running over, yelling. Jason managed to get Diesel back through the hole and mumbled something that might have been an apology. I didn't even respond. I was shaking. Riley had a limp for 3 days and wouldn't eat properly for almost a week. That night, I filed a report with animal control. I sent them the video clips I had, photos of the damage, and detailed what had happened. Jason found out a few days later when an officer visited his house. He came to my door, furious. Said I was trying to get his dog taken away, that I should have talked to him instead. I reminded him that I had multiple times, and that Diesel had broken into my yard and traumatized my dog. He said I was exaggerating and that I'd ruined his life. It didn't help that animal control issued a warning and required Jason to repair the fence and keep Diesel muzzled in public spaces for the time being. I later learned from another neighbor that Diesel had escaped before, twice, but they hadn't reported it. Since then, Jason has been cold, glaring, slamming his car door when I'm outside, occasionally shouting things under his breath if we cross paths. I've avoided him entirely. Diesel, to his credit, hasn't gotten out again, and the barking has slightly lessened, maybe out of fear of another report. But I've started wondering, was I the AH for going the formal route? I didn't want Diesel taken away, just controlled. And now my relationship with the next-door neighbor is totally destroyed. Other people in the neighborhood are split. A couple have quietly thanked me for doing what they didn't have a nerve to. But others think I overreacted and that I should have tried one more talk. So, AITA for reporting my neighbor's dog after months of escalating problems? AITA for refusing to let my sister move back into our family home, even though it technically belongs to both of us? So this is a situation that's been slowly spiraling for over a year and came to a head last month. I, 32M, am the older brother to my sister Jess, 29F. We grew up in a modest but nice house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Our parents bought the house when I was 2 and left it to both of us in their will when they passed unexpectedly 5 years ago. At the time, I was already living independently, and Jess was living with her boyfriend about an hour away. After the funeral, we talked about what to do with the house. Jess didn't want to move back, and I wasn't doing great emotionally or financially, so she told me I could live there as long as I wanted. She said she didn't want to sell it because it was our childhood home, and she liked the idea of keeping it in the family. I offered to buy her out eventually, but she waved it off and said, "We'll cross that bridge if it ever comes." So I moved in. I fixed it up, modernized some of the plumbing and electrical, painted, and over the past few years, I've invested a good amount of time and money into making it a real home again. I work remotely and eventually started a small business restoring furniture in the garage. I even turned the spare bedroom into a little photo studio for the pieces I sell online. I built a life here. Jess and I stayed close. We texted and called often, and she'd visit every couple of months. But then, about a year ago, things started to shift. She broke up with her boyfriend of 7 years. I don't know all the details, but it sounded messy. She stayed with friends for a while, then tried renting, but couldn't find anything affordable that didn't feel like a closet. The area we live in has gotten stupid expensive lately. 6 months ago, she asked if she could crash with me for a few weeks while she figured things out. I said yes. I was hesitant because I've gotten used to living alone, and the house is set up for a single person now, but I felt like it was the right thing to do. Immediately, it was clear she didn't plan on just crashing. She brought a ton of stuff, started rearranging the kitchen, moved her bed into the room I was using as a photo studio, and told me she was making it feel more like home again. She also didn't respect my work. She'd interrupt me during meetings, have loud phone calls right outside my office, and leave her things everywhere. She made passive-aggressive comments about my furniture projects, like they were cute hobbies and not an actual source of income. After 2 months, I asked what her plan was, and she got defensive. She said she was just trying to get back on her feet, and that I was being selfish. She brought up the fact that it was our house, and she had every right to be there. I agreed, technically she did. But I reminded her that I'd lived there for 4 years without any help from her, paid all the bills, done all the upkeep, and she'd never contributed financially. I told her I wasn't trying to kick her out, but I needed her to actually be working toward independence. She blew up, said I'd taken over the house, and made it impossible for her to feel like it was hers too. She started being colder, slamming doors, passive-aggressively cleaning up things she'd never cared about before, and basically just being unpleasant. I finally gave her a firm date. She had 3 months to find a new place. She said fine. 2 weeks later, she came to me with a rental listing and asked me to co-sign because her credit isn't great. I refused. I told her I didn't want to be financially tied to her in that way, especially after everything. She called me heartless and said I was forcing her to choose between living in her childhood home or becoming homeless. That's when she dropped the bomb. She said if I didn't start treating her like an equal owner, she'd push to sell the house. I was stunned. She's barely set foot in this house for the past 4 years. I reminded her that I had offered to buy her out multiple times, but she'd always said no. She brushed that off and said now she wants her share in cash or in space. I told her flat out, I wasn't going to sell. I wasn't going to give her half the current market value, which has gone up significantly, in large part because of the work I've done, and I wasn't going to live with her indefinitely. I said she could either accept my original offer from a few years ago, which I adjusted for inflation and repairs, or we could go to mediation. She stormed out. A few days later, I got a letter from her lawyer. She's officially pushing for a sale of the house. So now we're at war. I've hired my own attorney, and we're trying to find a way to settle without actually selling the house. But she's playing hardball. Her lawyer sent a proposal valuing the house as if it were turnkey, which it is now, and she wants a full 50% of that price. I countered with a valuation that accounts for the initial state of the house, the repairs, upgrades, and upkeep I've done, which I have receipts for, and the fact that she's contributed nothing. She called me manipulative and said I was trying to steal her inheritance. My friends are split. Some say she has a right to her share and I should just sell and start fresh. Others say she's being entitled and that I've earned the right to stay. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between my home and my relationship with my sister, and I genuinely don't know if I'm in the wrong here. I never expected her to pull the nuclear option over a place she had no interest in until it became convenient for her. AITA for refusing to let her move back in and not agreeing to sell the house. AITA for telling my sister I don't want to be her kid's godparent anymore after what she did. So this might be long and messy, but I need outside perspective. I, 33F, have a younger sister, Maya, 29F. We were close growing up, but our lives diverged pretty hard after our early 20s. I work in healthcare, have no kids, live alone, and am admittedly kind of introverted and structured. Maya is very free-spirited, bounces from job to job, and had a son, Luca, 6M, with a guy who dipped before the kid was even born. She's been a single mom since, though she has a decent support system with our parents and a couple close friends. I love my nephew. I was there the day he was born. When he was 2, Maya asked if I would be his godmother/legal guardian if anything ever happened to her. I said yes. No hesitation. I've never wanted kids of my own, but I knew if anything ever happened to Maya, I'd step up for him. Over the years, I've been present. I babysit often, take him for weekends, pay for things Maya struggles to afford sometimes, like dance lessons or shoes. I'm not rich, but I'm stable, and I genuinely enjoy being the reliable aunt. Maya's never been particularly responsible with money. She doesn't budget, she picks up side gigs but drops them quickly, and she tends to lean heavily on emotional arguments when she's in a tight spot. Now, to the incident. A few weeks ago, I got a call from Maya at 1 a.m. I was asleep. She asked if I could watch Luca that weekend because she got a last-minute opportunity to go to a music festival with some friends. I said no. I had a major project at work due that Monday and had planned to spend the weekend working from home. She got whiny, said I always say no to fun things, and that I should make time for family. I reiterated I was busy and ended the call. Saturday morning rolls around. I go out to grab groceries, and when I come home, Luca is sitting on my doorstep with a backpack and a handwritten note. Maya dropped him off while I was gone. The note said she knew I'd come around, and she couldn't let an opportunity to feel like her old self slip away. She said I always said I'd be there for Luca, and this was no different. I was absolutely stunned. She didn't answer her phone. I had no idea where she was or when she'd be back. I didn't want to scare Luca, so I brought him in and tried to act normal. But inside I was furious. 3 days. She came back Monday evening, smelling like beer and campfire smoke, wearing a band shirt and big sunglasses. No apology. She said something like, "See, it all worked out. He loves staying with you anyway." I told her that what she did was not only manipulative, it was borderline abandonment. I said I was done being her backup plan when she wants to relive her 20s, and most of all, I said I was seriously reconsidering being Luca's godparent if this is how she was going to treat me, like a babysitter with a guilt complex. She froze, said I was being cruel, that I couldn't unlove Luca just because I was mad at her. I told her I love Luca very much, but I was also not willing to keep putting up with her crossing boundaries and making me the default when she messes up. I said being someone's guardian is a serious responsibility, not a convenience. And if she didn't treat it with respect, I wouldn't be able to say yes anymore. Cue full meltdown. She told our parents, who call me heartless. Mom especially said I needed to get over myself, and that family is about stepping up when it's hard, not just when it's easy. I asked them if they wanted to be listed as Luca's guardian, since they seemed so eager to volunteer me. That shut them up fast. It's been 2 weeks. Maya's not talking to me. Luca keeps asking when he can come stay over again. I've seen him briefly at family dinner, but didn't have much alone time with him. I miss him a lot, but I'm still so angry. I'm trying to decide if I really do want to remove myself as godparent, or if I should just give Maya one last chance and set firmer boundaries. But then I wonder, was I overreacting? Should I have just sucked it up and taken care of Luca since he was already there? Was threatening to walk away from the godparent role taking it too far? AITA for telling my sister I don't want to be her kid's godparent anymore after what she did? AITA for refusing to let my parents meet my daughter after what they did when I was 16? I, 28F, have been no contact with my parents since I was 19. It wasn't a sudden break. It was something that had been building for years. And the final straw came when I realized they never actually saw me as a person, just a piece in their perfectly curated image of what a good family should look like. For context, I was adopted when I was 5. My bio mom was young and struggling with addiction, and after bouncing through 2 foster homes, I was adopted by Laura and Thomas. On paper, they were the dream couple, upper middle class, church-going, active in the community. They told me over and over again that I was chosen, that they had prayed for a daughter like me. I believed them, at first, but from the beginning, there were signs. Laura was obsessed with appearances. She would dress me like a doll, constantly fix my hair, and yell if I messed it up. I wasn't allowed to cut it, choose my clothes, or even eat what I wanted because that affected how I presented. If I had a meltdown, which happened often because, I was a traumatized child, she would punish me by taking away my toys or locking me in my room. But she'd cry about how hard she was trying, so I thought it was my fault. Thomas was quieter but stricter. He was all about obedience. He never hit me, but he'd lecture me for hours. Hours. He once made me sit at the dining table from 9 p.m. until 2 a.m. because I'd lied about not having homework. The worst part? He was calm the whole time. Methodical. That was always more terrifying to me than yelling. They enrolled me in all the right things, ballet, piano, summer camps, but I was miserable. I had no say. They bragged about my talents constantly, even though I hated every minute of it. I didn't make real friends until high school because I wasn't allowed to go to parties, hang out after school, or have sleepovers. They said it was to protect me, but it felt more like they didn't trust me. Or worse, they didn't want me to have a life that didn't include them. The worst year of my life was when I was 16. I had a boyfriend. Let's call him Eli. He was sweet, quiet, and respectful. We met in biology and started dating a few months in. I kept it a secret for as long as I could, but eventually, Laura found a note he'd written me tucked in a book. She completely lost it, called me fast, accused me of giving myself away, and grounded me for 2 months. She told Thomas, and he told me that I was breaking their hearts and throwing away all their hard work. But here's the thing, they didn't just ground me. They contacted Eli's parents and told them I was a bad influence, told them I was emotionally unstable and that I had attachment issues for being adopted. They even hinted I might be sexually inappropriate, which couldn't have been further from the truth. I hadn't even kissed him yet. His parents pulled him out of our school and transferred him. He never even said goodbye. I found out what happened from a mutual friend. After that, I just shut down. I stopped trying. I didn't talk unless I had to. I went to school, came home, and stayed in my room. When I turned 18, I got into a college several states away and left without looking back. I didn't even tell them what school I was going to until the day I moved out. I blocked them on everything 6 months later after a series of passive-aggressive emails about how ungrateful I was and how I'd broken their hearts again. Fast forward to now. I've been married for 4 years to an incredible partner, and we have a 2-year-old daughter. Becoming a mom stirred up a lot of things I thought I'd buried. I went to therapy, I wrote letters to my teenage self. I thought a lot about what kind of mother I want to be and how fiercely I want to protect my daughter from the things I went through. Then, out of the blue, I got a letter. A real, handwritten letter from Laura. She'd somehow found my address, still don't know how, and wrote a 5-page manifesto about how she and Thomas deserved to know their grandchild. She framed it as if we'd had a simple falling out. "We all say things we don't mean," she wrote. "It's time to move past the past." Not once did she apologize. Not once did she acknowledge the damage they did. Instead, she said things like, "You wouldn't even be a mother if we hadn't raised you the way we did." My stomach turned reading it. I didn't respond. I shredded the letter. 2 weeks later, I got a message from a mutual acquaintance, a girl I went to high school with who apparently still keeps in touch with my parents through church. She said they're devastated, that they just want to be part of their granddaughter's life, and that holding a grudge for this long isn't healthy. I asked her one question. "Did they tell you what they did to Eli?" She didn't answer. Now I'm getting messages from other people too, extended family, old neighbors, even someone who used to babysit me. All of them parroting the same line, family is family. So I'll say it here. No, I don't want them near my daughter. I don't want them planting those same seeds of shame and control in her that they did in me. I don't want her learning that love is conditional or that obedience is more important than autonomy. But sometimes I do wonder, am I being too harsh? Should I allow them to meet her supervised, maybe once, just so I can say I tried? Or am I right to stand my ground and protect the peace I've built? So, AITA for refusing to let my parents meet my daughter? AITA for refusing to let my neighbor use my Wi-Fi, even though she says it's for her kids' homework? About 6 months ago, I, 33M, bought my first house after years of saving. It's a modest 3-bedroom in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it's mine, and I've been proud to slowly fix it up. I work remotely as a software engineer, so having a strong internet connection is not just a convenience. It's essential for my job. 2 weeks after I moved in, my neighbor, a woman in her late 30s named Carla, came over to introduce herself. She was friendly enough, had 2 kids, a girl, 11, and a boy, 9, and lived in the house directly next to mine. During that first meeting, she asked if I could recommend a good internet provider. I told her who I used, mentioned they were pretty reliable, and that was it. A few days later, she knocked on my door again, this time asking if she could borrow my Wi-Fi temporarily because she was still figuring out which provider to go with. She said it would just be for a week, so her kids could do their homework and she could check email. I hesitated because I'm wary of sharing my internet, especially since I work with sensitive data, but she was polite and I wanted to be a good neighbor. So I created a guest network, limited the bandwidth, and gave her the password. That was in January. Fast forward to March, and she was still using the network. I noticed my internet speed getting slower during work hours. I checked the connected devices and saw multiple phones, a tablet, and a smart TV all on the guest network. I went over to talk to her about it, thinking maybe she forgot or didn't realize it was still on. She apologized and said she'd get her own service set up soon, but gave me a bit of a sob story about finances, saying things were tight and she didn't want to cancel her kids' tutoring just to pay for internet. I felt bad, but told her I needed to prioritize my work, so I changed the password. That night, I got a long, passive-aggressive text from her saying that her daughter had a math project due and couldn't access the resources she needed. I ignored it. 2 days later, her son knocked on my door holding a Chromebook, saying his mom told him to ask me for the new password. I told him, gently, that I couldn't give it to him, but I was sure his school had offline resources he could use or he could download things at the library. He looked confused and just said okay and walked off. The next morning, I found a printed note in my mailbox, not signed but clearly from Carla, saying, "I thought you were different. I thought you cared about this community. Internet is a basic utility these days, and you've deprived 2 kids of their education. I hope you're proud." That rubbed me the wrong way. I had tried to be nice. I gave her over 2 months of free internet, and instead of gratitude, I got guilt-tripped. I started locking my network down more tightly after that. About a week ago, I noticed someone had tried multiple times to log into my main router using default admin credentials. That freaked me out. I reset everything, updated firmware, changed passwords. I didn't have any direct proof it was her, but I couldn't imagine who else would be trying to access my network. I installed a basic security camera over my front door. Sure enough, 3 nights later, I caught someone walking up with a phone, standing near the front of my house, clearly trying to get a signal. It was Carla. I didn't confront her, just saved the footage and left it at that. Then this week, she started telling other neighbors that I was some kind of elitist tech bro who didn't care about kids and was making life harder for a struggling single mom. I've gotten a few cold shoulders from other people on the street. Someone made a joke at a neighborhood meeting about how some of us think the internet is more important than helping children, and it was pretty obviously aimed at me. Now, I'm starting to feel like a jerk. I never meant to hurt her kids. I just wanted to protect my livelihood and my privacy. But people keep implying that I'm being heartless and selfish. One neighbor even said, "You could afford a house and high-speed internet, but can't spare a little kindness?" I didn't respond because I knew anything I said would just escalate it. I asked my brother, and he said I did the right thing and that Carla was manipulating me. But my mom, who always gives people the benefit of the doubt, said that maybe I could have found a way to compromise, like offering the kids an hour a night or something. So now I'm torn. Was I wrong to cut her off completely after she pushed boundaries? Or am I just being overly protective and paranoid? AITA? AITA for reporting my neighbor's backyard business and getting him evicted. Even though it's technically true, he helped my son. So this whole thing snowballed way further than I thought it would. And now everyone on the block either won't talk to me or gives me that fake smile, means they're trash-talking you the second you walk away. I'm just trying to figure out if I really did something wrong or if people are just romanticizing a guy they barely knew. Okay, so I, 38F, live in a relatively quiet suburban neighborhood with my husband and our 10-year-old son, Dylan. We moved here about 5 years ago, and most people keep to themselves, which I've always appreciated. One of our neighbors, let's call him Kyle, mid-30s, rented the house behind us. I didn't know much about him. He's a bit of a free spirit type, tattoos, old Jeep in the driveway, plays guitar on his porch kind of guy. My husband called him the wannabe boho cowboy. Kyle and I only exchanged basic pleasantries before all this happened. But I did know he worked from home, doing something vague in creative design, and had a big converted shed in his backyard that he spent most of his time in. We just assumed it was a home office or studio. A few months ago, I noticed more people coming in and out of his backyard, mostly late teens or early 20s, maybe 3 to 5 kids at a time, always in the afternoons. They'd stay a couple hours, then leave. I didn't think too much of it at first, but I did notice the groups getting larger, sometimes up to a dozen. One day, I counted 7 cars parked along our little cul-de-sac, which caused some grumbling from other neighbors too. Then came the noise. It wasn't loud music or anything. It was laughter, cheering, and occasionally shouting. Nothing dangerous, just noticeable. Once around 7 p.m., I heard what sounded like a crowd clapping in unison. That's when I started getting suspicious. Around the same time, my son started talking about Mr. Kyle more and more. At first, it was little comments like, "Mr. Kyle has a telescope in his backyard," or "Mr. Kyle let me play the drums in his studio." I asked how he knew this, and he said his friend Tyler, who lives next door to Kyle, invited him over sometimes when Kyle ran creative camp. Creative camp? That's when I got a weird feeling. I asked Dylan more questions, and he said Kyle ran an unofficial art and music program out of his backyard. Completely free, no sign-ups, no parents involved unless they wanted to drop by. Kids just showed up and participated in whatever project Kyle was leading that day. Painting murals, writing short films, building birdhouses, learning guitar. My son loved it. Said he felt more free there than at school. That honestly gave me mixed feelings. Of course, I want him to feel free and happy, but with some random dude who isn't licensed to teach and doesn't have a background check. I asked around. A few other parents were aware of it and thought it was beautiful that someone would give back to the youth without asking for anything in return. One even said Kyle helped her daughter overcome serious social anxiety. But something about it still didn't sit right with me. So I did what I thought was reasonable. I called the city to ask if what Kyle was doing was legal. I didn't accuse him of anything. I just asked whether someone was allowed to run an unofficial educational gathering with minors in a residential zone. They took my info, said they'd look into it. 2 weeks later, Kyle got a visit from city code enforcement. Then another. Then, suddenly he was gone. A for rent sign appeared outside his house, and someone told me he'd been evicted for multiple code violations, including running an unlicensed business and structural issues with a converted shed. I later found out the structure wasn't up to fire code and lacked proper ventilation. Apparently, he had installed a gas heater himself and wired a bunch of electrical outlets without permits. People were furious, especially the parents whose kids had been going to Kyle's sessions. Word got around that I'd been the one to make the call. I didn't tell anyone, but I guess someone at the city leaked it, or someone guessed. Now I get dirty looks at the grocery store. One mom even said, "Hope you're proud. You shut down the one place our kids actually like going." My husband is on my side. He said I did the right thing. We don't know this guy. He had a bunch of minors in his shed, and no one knew what kind of safety precautions he had in place. I'd seen 0 waivers, no licenses, nothing to show he had any qualifications. What if a kid had gotten hurt? What if there'd been a fire? What if someone accused him of something awful and the whole neighborhood had enabled it? But then Dylan came home crying one day. He said, "I got Mr. Kyle kicked out, and now he doesn't get to finish the short film he was writing." He said he feels like I don't trust him to make his own decisions. And that hit me harder than I expected. I tried to explain it was about safety, not Kyle personally, but he wasn't having it. And now I'm second-guessing myself. Was I too cautious? Was there another way to handle it? Maybe talk to Kyle first? But at the time, I felt like that would have been confrontational or worse, tipped him off if something shady was going on. And now I've basically branded myself the neighborhood narc. I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't think he'd be evicted. I thought maybe he'd get a warning, file the right paperwork, and make it legit. But I guess once the city got involved, everything came down hard. So, AITA for reporting my neighbor's backyard creative camp, even though my own kid liked it and nothing bad had yet happened. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my dad's new wife and her daughter live in the house I inherited from my mom. This whole situation has escalated in a way I never imagined, and now my entire family is split. I, 26F, inherited my childhood home 2 years ago when my mom passed away. She died after a long battle with cancer, and I was her only child. The house was hers long before she met my dad. They never married, but they were together for over 15 years before they split when I was 14. After they broke up, my dad moved out and got a small apartment. They stayed friendly for the most part, but I always stayed with my mom. I love that house. It was a modest 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, but it's filled with memories. My mom painting the kitchen yellow because she said it looked like sunshine, the rose bushes she planted in the backyard, the little growth chart on the pantry door with my height marked from ages 5 to 17. That house is more than a building. It's my mom. When she passed, she left the house to me in her will. It was paid off. I live there now and work from home. I've updated some things, but I've kept most of it the same because it feels like she's still there in little ways. Here's where it gets messy. About 8 months ago, my dad told me he'd met someone, Dana. She's 43, has a 17-year-old daughter named Kaylee, and they moved in together after only a few months. My dad seemed happy, so I tried to be supportive. I've met Dana a handful of times. She's polite enough, but there's always been this weird vibe, like she's evaluating me every time we speak. She also has this habit of oversharing how hard her life has been and how nice it must be to have a house handed to you. Red flag, right? A few weeks ago, I was at dinner with my dad, and he just dropped it on me like it was no big deal. He and Dana have been talking, and we all agree it would make the most sense for him, Dana, and Kaylee to move into my house. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He said I had too much space for one person, that it's the family home, and that it was only fair since he helped my mom pay bills back in the day. I was stunned. I told him absolutely not. That house is mine. My mom left it to me. It's not a vacation home or a spare property. I live there. I work there. It's where I feel closest to her. I told him I wasn't comfortable with Dana living in a house that's so personal to me, especially when she's made several comments about me having it easy and clearly resents what I have. He got angry and said I was being selfish. He reminded me that he used to live there too, that I wouldn't exist without him and my mom being together, and that Dana and Kaylee deserve stability. I told him I was sorry, but that wasn't my problem to solve. He left furious. Since then, it's blown up. My aunt, Dad's sister, called to tell me she's disappointed in how cold I've become. She said Dana is a good woman who's just trying to find her footing, and that Kaylee is going to college next year, so it wouldn't even be for that long. My cousin texted me, saying I should be kind, and that I'm acting rich for not wanting to share a house. Even some mutual family friends are taking his side. I feel like I'm losing my mind. First of all, I don't think it's normal to demand your grown child hand over their home. Second, Dana and I aren't even close. She's never shown interest in getting to know me beyond surface-level pleasantries. Third, Kaylee has never spoken to me unless prompted, and from what I've seen, she's rude and entitled. I have no desire to suddenly play host to a teenager and her mom in my house. But now I'm getting daily texts and guilt trips. My dad has stopped talking to me altogether. I haven't even told him this, but I'm genuinely considering changing the locks and installing a security system, just in case. It's gotten that tense. Still, I keep second-guessing myself. I do have more space than I strictly need. The house does have memories for him too, I guess. And maybe Dana and Kaylee really are struggling. But the way it was brought up and then pushed so hard feels wrong. Like they already assumed I'd cave. Like it wasn't a request, just a formality. It also doesn't help that my dad once said to me, right after my mom passed, she never would have had that house without me. I let it go at the time, thinking he was grieving, but it stuck with me. I've tried talking to a few friends, but they're divided. Some say I have every right to say no, that it's my home, and this is a clear overstep. Others think I could compromise, maybe let them stay in the guest room temporarily or offer to help them find a rental. But honestly, I feel like if I let them in, even temporarily, they'll never leave. And it'll destroy the last thing I have that feels like my mom. I didn't ask for this drama. I didn't choose to be the gatekeeper of anyone's stability. I just wanted to live in peace in the home my mom gave me. Now I'm being painted as some heartless brat who won't open her doors to family. But to me, this isn't just about space. It's about safety, memory, boundaries, and respect. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my dad's new wife and her daughter live in the house I inherited from my mom. AITA for refusing to speak to my father after finding out what he did to my childhood best friend. This all started a few months ago when I ran into my old best friend, Jake, at a bookstore downtown. We hadn't seen each other in nearly 10 years. Back in high school, Jake and I were inseparable. We lived on the same street, rode our bikes everywhere together, played video games until our eyes hurt, and basically grew up side by side. He was like a brother to me, and my parents knew him just as well as I did. My dad used to drive us to soccer practice and take us on weekend trips to the mountains. Jake even spent Christmas Eve at our house one year when his mom had to work a double shift. Then, right after sophomore year, he just disappeared. No text, no call, nothing. He stopped coming to school. His house was suddenly empty. I remember riding my bike past and seeing a "for rent" sign out front. I was crushed. I tried reaching out a few times, texts, emails, even wrote him a letter, but I never got anything back. I thought maybe he had to move suddenly, maybe something happened with his family, but eventually I gave up and assumed he just didn't care enough to keep in touch. I was bitter about it for years. So when I ran into him that day, it was surreal. We were both shocked. He looked good, different, older, but still very much the Jake I remembered. We got coffee and caught up for hours. And then the conversation turned. I asked why he never told me he was moving, why he left the way he did. And that's when the Rayall story came out. Jake told me he didn't move. He and his mom were evicted, forced out in the middle of the night, essentially. He said his mom had been fired from her job at the company my father owned. That alone would have been hard, but apparently my dad accused her of stealing. Jake swore up and down that his mom would never have done something like that, and the whole thing came as a shock to them both. My dad had her escorted out by security and made sure she couldn't find work in town again. Jake said it was humiliating. They were blacklisted. With no money and nowhere to go, they left everything behind and stayed with his aunt 2 states away. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My dad never mentioned any of this. I pushed Jake for more. And he told me something even worse. Apparently, his mom had discovered that another employee, someone higher up, was embezzling. She reported it anonymously, but my dad found out it was her and decided to make an example of her, blaming her for it instead. According to Jake, my dad didn't want a scandal, so he threw her under the bus. I left that meeting feeling like I had been punched in the gut. I wanted to believe Jake, but part of me was screaming that there had to be more to the story. So I went home and confronted my dad. At first, he denied everything. Said Jake's mom was a decent worker who made a dumb mistake. But when I really pushed, his tone changed. He admitted that there had been internal issues and that she got caught up in something she shouldn't have. He refused to go into detail. When I asked about the embezzlement claims and the idea that she was set up, he got defensive, said I didn't understand how business worked, and accused me of taking the side of someone who had run off without a word. I told him Jake didn't run. They were forced out. That's when he lost it. He told me I was being ungrateful, that everything he did was to protect the company, the family, and our reputation. He said sometimes people had to be sacrificed for the greater good. I didn't say much after that. I went home, sat with it for a long time, and haven't spoken to him since. That was 6 weeks ago. Now the whole family is involved. My mom is upset and begging me to just let it go. She says what's done is done and dredging it up won't fix anything. My sister says I'm blowing things out of proportion and turning on our own father over something that happened a decade ago. They keep telling me I don't know the full story, that I'm judging based on hearsay. Maybe, but I can't stop thinking about Jake, about how he just disappeared one day, about how hurt I was and how confused I felt for years, and now knowing that my dad might have been responsible for all of it. Worse, I've started remembering all the little things from back then. How stressed Jake was. How he never wanted to come to our house the last few months we were friends. How he'd avoid talking about his mom's job. How nervous he seemed whenever my dad was around. It's all falling into place, and I hate what it adds up to. I don't know how to have a relationship with someone who could do that to people we cared about, to a kid who spent more nights in our living room than I can count. I don't know how to pretend everything's okay when I keep seeing the look on Jake's face as he told me about what they went through. My dad thinks I'm being disrespectful. My family thinks I'm being dramatic. I think I'm finally seeing him clearly. So, AITA for refusing to speak to my father after learning what he did to my childhood best friend? AITA for canceling the family vacation I paid for after my siblings kept calling me cheap and controlling? 32F, make a good living. I work in tech, have no kids, live modestly, and save aggressively. I'm not flashy, but I do like to treat the people I care about. That includes my family. My 2 younger brothers, 28M and 25M, my younger sister, 23F, and my parents, late 50s. They're all lovely people in their own way, but they have a habit of leaning on me financially. I've helped with emergencies, student loans, car repairs, even rent. I never made a big deal out of it. A few months ago, I had this idea to take the whole family on a vacation. Something relaxing and fun before life started shifting. My sister just graduated college. One brother is about to get engaged, and my parents are starting to talk retirement. I thought it would be a nice way to spend time together without stress. I planned the whole thing. Accommodations, flights, excursions, even most meals at a very comfortable but not ridiculous resort. Total cost, about $18,000 for 8 people for a week. I didn't ask anyone to contribute. The only thing I didn't include was alcohol and personal spending. I made it clear up front. I'll cover the basics: lodging, travel, food, activities. Just handle your own extras. Everyone seemed thrilled. That changed when we actually got there. From day one, the vibe was weird. First, my sister made a comment when I ordered a simple meal at a beachside cafe like, "Don't worry, she's just cheap about herself, not us." I laughed it off. But then my youngest brother joined in, saying something like, "Yeah, she probably has a spreadsheet budget for every meal." They both laughed. I didn't. On day 3, we were walking through a local market when my mom asked me if I wanted to buy something for myself. I said I didn't need anything, just enjoying the walk. My other brother chimed in, "Of course she doesn't. She's allergic to spending money on herself. Must be nice to be the rich one and still be the stingiest." That one stung. That night at dinner, They ordered rounds of drinks and bottles of wine, like expensive stuff, and then handed me the bill. I reminded them nicely that alcohol and personal extras were not included. My dad raised an eyebrow and said, "Really? You bring us all the way out here and can't even cover a couple bottles of wine?" Everyone chuckled, except me. I told them that if they wanted to split the wine, I was happy to get one bottle. But 5? Not in the budget. My sister rolled her eyes and said, "You make 6 figures and can't afford wine?" Seriously, it became this whole thing, and I ended up paying just to end the argument. The next morning, I didn't go to breakfast. I needed some space. When I finally met up with them, I walked in on my siblings joking with each other, saying stuff like, "Better not ask for an extra towel. She might charge us." My other brother said, "Nah, she'll just write it off as a tax deduction." I confronted them. I told them I was hurt, that I didn't expect to be mocked for trying to do something kind. My sister said, "Relax, we're just teasing. Don't be so sensitive." My mom added, "You do have a bit of a controlling streak, honey. Maybe this is why you like to hold the purse strings." That was it for me. I walked out, went back to the hotel, and made some calls. Within the next 24 hours, I canceled all remaining prepaid activities, boat rides, spa appointments, a guided hike, and a dinner at a fancy restaurant I had booked for the last night. I also canceled the hotel's tab privileges, meaning everyone had to pay for their own food and drinks from then on. They still had rooms, flights home, and the beach, but the perks were gone. The backlash was immediate. My sister called me selfish and dramatic. One brother said I ruined the vibe. My mom asked me what kind of example I was setting by withdrawing generosity like that. I told them, I don't mind being generous. I don't mind being mocked for it. If they think I'm cheap, then let them see what it's like when I'm actually not paying. When we got home, everyone was frosty. My dad sent me an email that said I needed to apologize for making the vacation about control. My youngest brother posted something vague on Instagram about some people only giving to feed their ego, which I assume was about me. My mom hasn't called, but my best friend says I did the right thing, that they were ungrateful and took advantage, that I was being treated like a walking wallet and nothing more. I honestly didn't do this trip to prove anything. I just wanted us to spend time together. But now I'm wondering if pulling the plug was too much. Maybe I should have just sucked it up and had the hard conversations later. Maybe I did make it about control in the end, even if I didn't mean to. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay with me after he lost everything, even though I have the space. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay with me after he lost everything, even though I have the space. I, 32F, live alone in a 3-bedroom house that I bought 5 years ago after saving up for years. I'm not rich, but I work in IT and live frugally, so I've built a comfortable life for myself. I have 2 spare rooms. One is a home office. The other is kind of a guest/storage room with a fold-out bed and some old furniture. My brother Nick, 36M, has always been different for me. Where I was the straight A, save every dollar type, Nick was more about living in the moment. He barely scraped through school, floated from job to job, partied hard in his 20s, and spent his 30s chasing startup dreams that never panned out. Our parents have always coddled him, and I've been the responsible one since we were kids. They didn't have much money, so when Nick's ventures failed, they always expected me to help out. And I have, more than once. I've loaned him money, never repaid, let him crash on my couch twice, once for 3 months, once for 6, and even helped him get a job at my company, which he quit after a month because it was too rigid. So about 6 months ago, I drew a hard boundary and told my family I was done being his safety net. If he wanted to live differently, fine, but he couldn't count on me to keep bailing him out. Well, last month, Nick's girlfriend of 2 years broke up with him. He was living in her apartment, had no job at the time, and had apparently maxed out 2 credit cards. She kicked him out. He had nowhere to go. He called me at 11 p.m. crying, asking if he could come stay with me just for a few weeks until he figured things out. I paused and said no. I told him I was sorry he was in a bad place, but that I had made it clear I wasn't going to be his backup plan anymore. He lost it. He said I was heartless, that family means helping each other no matter what, that he would do it for me if the roles were reversed, which I highly doubt. I stayed firm. I told him I loved him, but that love didn't mean sacrificing my peace and stability for someone who refuses to help themselves. The next morning, I woke up to 43 missed messages from my mom, dad, and 2 aunts. They were furious. My mom said she didn't recognize me anymore and that I was turning into a cold, selfish person. My dad was a bit calmer, but said that no matter what Nick's mistakes were, he was still my brother and I should be there for him. One aunt offered to take him in for a bit, but she lives in a 1-bedroom condo and said it would be tight. My mom finally let him move back in with them, though they're on a fixed income and it's clearly not sustainable. In the weeks since, the whole family dynamic has shifted. I'm the black sheep now. Group chats go silent when I speak. I've been excluded from 2 family dinners, and my mom still won't talk to me. Nick, meanwhile, posts vague Facebook statuses about finding out who really has your back and fake family. I've stopped responding to all of it, but it's wearing on me. Now, here's where the guilt starts to creep in. I do have space. He's my brother. And yeah, he's made a mess of his life, but people can change, right? Maybe this was his rock bottom. Maybe if I had helped, this time really would have been different. But then I remember all the times I did help, all the sleepless nights, all the times he promised change and delivered the same chaos. I remember the time I came home to find a house party happening in my living room while I was gone on a work trip, even after I told him no guests. I remember the weird smell that lingered for months and the dent he put in my car while borrowing it real quick. I remember how every favor turned into a fight when I asked him to respect boundaries. And yet, somehow, I'm the villain now. A few friends say I did the right thing. A couple of coworkers, after hearing the story, even said they admired me for holding the line. But others, especially people with siblings, are more conflicted. One friend said that if it had been her brother, she'd have taken him in no matter what. She said you don't abandon family in crisis. So I don't know. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong. Maybe I've been so focused on protecting myself that I've lost sight of compassion. Or maybe I'm just finally refusing to be the only adult in a family of enablers. It doesn't help that Nick's situation has only gotten worse. He's not working. He spends his days sleeping and watching TV at our parents' place, barely leaving the house. He's burned through the last of his savings. My parents are clearly stressed, but won't say anything directly to him. Instead, they keep calling me, asking if I've changed my mind yet. I haven't, but I also haven't blocked them because despite everything, they're still my family. So now I'm stuck between guilt and resentment, between wanting to keep the peace and wanting to finally live in peace, between love and boundaries. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me, even though I could have helped, and now the whole family thinks I'm a bad guy. AITA for asking my friend to pay for the damage to my car, even though it was my fault. So I, 28M, have a friend, Chris, 29M, who I've known for about 10 years. We're pretty close, hang out often, and generally get along really well. A couple of weeks ago, we had this big argument, and it's been bothering me ever since, so I need to know if I'm in the wrong here or if I'm justified in my actions. Here's the situation. I was driving home from work one evening, and I got a call from Chris. He was about to head to a bar nearby and wanted to know if I wanted to join him for a drink. I was exhausted, but said I'd meet him in about an hour. As I was finishing the call, I was driving through a parking lot to grab a quick snack from a convenience store before heading to the bar. It was late, and the parking lot was pretty empty, but there were a few cars scattered around. As I was backing out of the spot, I didn't notice that a car was parked too close behind me, and I ended up tapping their bumper. It wasn't a huge crash or anything, but I could hear the sound of the impact. I immediately got out and checked. There was a pretty noticeable dent on the bumper of the car I hit, but there was no obvious damage to mine, so I thought I was in the clear. I checked the other car's plates, but there was no one around, so I figured the owner must have been inside the store or something. I left a note with my number on it, just in case. After that, I went to the bar, and I did tell Chris about the incident when I got there. He was pretty understanding and said, "Well, it happens, man. Just make sure to take care of it." The next day, I got a call from the car's owner. Her name's Lisa, 34F, and she was furious. Apparently, the dent was pretty severe, and it was on a newer model, so it wasn't something that could just be buffed out. She told me she'd have to take it to a shop for repairs, and it would cost around $1,500. At that point, I realized that I was probably in more trouble than I initially thought. Now, Here's where it gets tricky. I called up my insurance, and they told me that since I was technically at fault, my rates would go up if I filed a claim. They also mentioned that it would likely be cheaper to pay for the damage myself instead of going through insurance. So, I decided to reach out to Lisa and offer to cover the cost of repairs. I told her that I could pay for the repairs in installments, and we worked out a payment plan where I'd pay her $500 a month until the full amount was covered. Everything seemed to be going well until my friend Chris got involved. A couple of days after I reached out to Lisa, I was talking to Chris about how I was dealing with the situation, and he said, "Man, are you really going to pay for it all yourself? It was just a small tap. That's a problem if she's overreacting about a dent." At first, I brushed it off, but he kept going. "You shouldn't be the one paying. It wasn't like you hit her head on or anything. She's just trying to get money out of you. You could have just left a fake number or ignore the whole thing. It's not a big deal." I was kind of taken aback by this because Chris has always been a pretty straightforward guy, but he's also not really one to shy away from confrontation. He's known for pushing boundaries, so his opinion on the matter threw me off. I explained to him that I was trying to do the right thing. I felt responsible for the damage, and while I understood that it wasn't the worst accident in the world, it was still my fault, and I didn't want to deal with the guilt of leaving someone to pay for something I caused. But Chris wasn't having it. The argument between us really escalated, and Chris started accusing me of being too soft. He said I was being a sucker by paying for repairs when I should have let her deal with it herself. According to him, it was her car, her responsibility, and I was being taken advantage of by her. He even suggested that maybe I should get a lawyer involved and dispute her claims. To be honest, I felt conflicted. On one hand, Chris was my best friend, and I valued his opinion. On the other hand, I felt that I should stick to my decision of taking responsibility for my mistake. I'm not saying that Chris was wrong, but it didn't sit well with me that he was encouraging me to brush off the situation and avoid taking accountability. I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I was being too generous? Maybe Lisa was just using the situation to squeeze me for money? But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd be letting myself off the hook too easily if I didn't take care of the damage. I didn't want to be the kind of person who avoids responsibility when it's their fault. Now, this is where things have gotten really awkward. Chris and I haven't spoken much since our argument, and I've been feeling really uneasy about our friendship. I've already made the first payment to Lisa, and she's been super understanding, but I'm still not sure if I made the right decision. Chris hasn't reached out to apologize for how he acted, and I'm starting to wonder if maybe he's right. Was I too quick to take responsibility? Was I wrong for offering to pay for something that wasn't such a huge deal? I've tried to talk to Chris again about it, but he insists that I'm making a huge mistake and that I'm being way too nice. He even called me a pushover. I don't want to lose my best friend, but I also don't want to be the kind of person who avoids doing the right thing because someone else tells me I'm overreacting. So, AITA for asking my friend to pay for the damage to my car, even though it was my fault? Should I have just walked away and let Lisa deal with it herself? Or is Chris right, and I'm being too soft in the situation? AITA for calling my sister out for making everything about her, even when it doesn't involve her. I, 29M, have a sister, Sarah, 31F, who has always had a knack for turning everything into a dramatic event. I'm not talking about the kind of drama where you might expect a bit of flair at a family gathering or a small personal problem. No, Sarah goes beyond that. She has this talent for making anything, no matter how mundane, about herself. And if it isn't, she'll somehow turn it into an issue where she's the victim. I've always let it slide because, well, she's my sister and I didn't want to escalate things. But recently, it's been getting to a point where I'm just fed up. A little context, I've been working at the same company for about 5 years. I moved up the ranks, worked hard, and I finally got promoted to a manager position. It was a big deal for me, especially because I've been putting in overtime, sacrificing time with friends and family, and dedicating my energy to prove myself. I was excited to share the news, so I told my parents, and of course my sister was there. She congratulated me, but I could tell something was off. After a few minutes of small talk, Sarah started going on and on about how she was feeling down about her own career. She works in marketing, and while she does well, she hasn't had the same level of success as I have. Instead of celebrating my promotion, The whole conversation turned into her complaining about how she feels stuck in her job, how she's not getting the recognition she deserves, and how hard her life has been. And I get it, we all go through rough patches, but she completely took the spotlight off me. I tried to shift the focus back to my promotion, mentioning how excited I was about the new responsibilities and how I was already brainstorming some ideas for the team. Sarah's response? She immediately said, "Well, I guess that's great for you, but I don't even know if I want to stay in marketing anymore. It just feels like nothing is going right in my life right now." It was like I wasn't even talking. I felt uncomfortable, but I let it go because I didn't want to make a scene. But things didn't stop there. A few days later, Sarah started texting me about how I should have been more supportive when she was venting about her job. She even said that I made it about myself and didn't even try to comfort her or offer advice. I was floored. I mean, I had just shared one of the most exciting moments of my life, and she somehow managed to turn it into an opportunity to seek validation for her own issues. Now, the reason I'm writing this is because last weekend, our parents hosted a family barbecue, and of course, Sarah was there. She had been talking about how she was going to quit her job and find herself, which, to me, sounded like a cry for attention. As the day went on, the conversation moved to me and my new position at work. Once again, Sarah interrupted and started talking about how she felt unfulfilled in her career. It wasn't just a casual mention either. It was a full-blown tirade. She started bringing up how she didn't understand why she wasn't getting the same opportunities one was, and she felt undervalued. Our parents seemed to side with her and started offering advice like, "Maybe you should look into getting more training," and "Have you considered talking to HR about your concerns?" They were almost ignoring the fact that I had just made a huge achievement. I snapped. I couldn't help it anymore. I told her, "Sarah, can you just stop making everything about you for once? I just shared a huge milestone in my life, and all you've done is talk about how miserable you are. I'm tired of your constant need for attention. I'm happy for my achievements, and I want to enjoy this moment without you turning it into another therapy session." The room fell silent. Sarah's face went red, and our parents immediately started scolding me, saying I shouldn't be so harsh. My dad even said, "You know she's struggling, right? Maybe you should be more empathetic." I was genuinely shocked. No one ever called Sarah out, and when I did, I was the one getting yelled at. Sarah left the barbecue in tears, and now I'm being bombarded with texts from my family telling me I should apologize. They're all saying that I was too harsh and that I should have been there for her. Some of them are even saying that I'm being selfish by making it about myself instead of being more understanding of her struggles. Honestly, I'm just exhausted. I know Sarah's going through a rough time, but it feels like every time something good happens to me, she somehow turns it into her own personal drama. I've been patient, I've offered support, but it never seems to be enough. At this point, I'm just frustrated. I'm tired of her always making things about her, and I'm tired of my family enabling it. So, AITA for calling my sister out and not apologizing for it. AITA for refusing to help my friend after she borrowed my things without asking. 26F, have a friend, let's call her Sarah, 27F, who I've known for about 5 years. We met through mutual friends at university and have been fairly close ever since. We both have different personalities. I'm more introverted and prefer spending time in smaller groups or by myself, while Sarah is extroverted, always planning outings and events, and is generally more outgoing. She's also the type to be very spontaneous with things, often assuming that everyone around her will just be okay with whatever she decides. It's important to mention that Sarah has a tendency to take things without asking. It started off small, like borrowing a pen, a charger, or a book. I never really minded too much, thinking it was just part of being friends. But over time, this behavior escalated. She began taking clothes, makeup, and even personal items like my skincare products and hair tools, all without asking. When I'd bring it up, she would act like it wasn't a big deal and would apologize, but then do it again the next week. For the longest time, I felt like I was the one overreacting when I brought it up. I didn't want to seem like a bad friend or be too controlling, so I brushed it off. But after a while, it started to feel like she saw my things as public property. There was always some excuse, "I forgot mine," or I thought it was fine since we're such good friends. And while I get that sometimes people forget or need to borrow something, it felt like it was happening more and more often, and it was starting to feel disrespectful. The last straw came a few months ago. Sarah and I were planning a weekend trip with a few other friends. I'd saved up for months to buy a new camera, a bit of an investment for me since I'm into photography. I was really excited to use it, especially since we'd be going to a beautiful national park. I made sure to tell Sarah how excited I was and how careful I'd need to be with it. We were at the Airbnb on the first night, and Sarah asked if she could take a few pictures with my camera. I hesitated, but I didn't want to seem unreasonable, so I let her. I even reminded her to be careful and to make sure she returned it to me afterward. I was very specific about not wanting anyone else to use it because it was expensive and I didn't want anything to happen to it. Sarah assured me everything would be fine. Well, the next morning, I woke up and couldn't find my camera anywhere. I searched the whole place, and it was nowhere to be found. I asked Sarah about it, and she immediately started acting defensive. She said she had taken it outside for a few shots and must have left it in the backyard. I ran out to check, but no camera. I asked the others in the group if they had seen it, but no one had. Sarah's story kept changing, and she started to get frustrated with me for accusing her. After a few hours of searching, the camera still hadn't turned up. I was absolutely devastated. The camera was gone, and I had no idea what had happened to it. Sarah eventually admitted that she had taken it into the woods, where she and a few others were hiking the previous evening, but she couldn't remember where exactly she had put it. At this point, I was furious. Not only had she completely disregarded my wishes about the camera, but now it was lost, and I was left with nothing. We spent the next few days scouring the area, hoping it would turn up, but no luck. When we returned home, I was still really upset. I asked Sarah for help in replacing the camera. She said she would contribute, but was too broke at the moment to pitch in. I was angry, not just because she didn't take care of my things, but because it felt like she wasn't taking responsibility for losing it. Instead of apologizing and trying to help fix the situation, she was acting like I was the one being unreasonable. It's been a couple of months since that trip, and I haven't been able to afford a new camera yet. The whole situation still stings, and I haven't been able to shake the feeling that Sarah doesn't value my things or respect my boundaries. Recently, she asked if I want to hang out, and I said no. I've started distancing myself from her because I'm tired of constantly being taken advantage of. She's reached out a few times, but I haven't responded. I'm not sure if I should tell her why I've been avoiding her, or just let the friendship fade. My other friends have been split on the situation. Some of them agree that Sarah needs to be held accountable, while others think I'm being too harsh and should let it go. But I'm genuinely at a loss. Am I being too over the top here? Should I just forgive her and move on? Or am I justified in my decision to stop helping her and distance myself from the friendship? So, AITA for refusing to help Sarah or even talk to her after everything that's happened. AITA for not letting my brother stay with me after he got evicted. So, some background. I, 29M, have a brother, Jack, 25M, who I've always had a bit of a complicated relationship with. He's the younger sibling, and for a long time, I felt like I've had to do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of helping him out. Our parents are both in their late 50s and have been kind of emotionally checked out for years. They did the best they could, but they weren't exactly the hands-on type. That left me to pick up the slack. Jack and I used to be really close when we were kids, but over the years, he became more and more reckless. He dropped out of college after one semester, tried his hand at a few different jobs, but none of them stuck. For the past 2 years, he's been living in a small apartment, but it was never really stable. He had some financial issues and relied on credit card a lot. Over time, he started accumulating debt, and I kept telling him that he needed to get his life together before it was too late. He didn't listen, and things have gotten progressively worse. A few weeks ago, Jack called me out of the blue, asking if I could help him with a small favor. It turns out that he had been evicted from his apartment because he couldn't make rent for the past 3 months. He told me he had already used up all his savings, didn't have enough for a new place, and was in a bit of a tight spot. He mentioned he had nowhere else to go and that he would really appreciate it if I could let him stay with me temporarily. At first, I hesitated. I've been through this cycle with him before. I've helped him with bills, loans, and even let him crash at my place in the past when things weren't going well for him. He always said he was going to get back on his feet, but each time it felt like things were getting worse, not better. I'd even made sacrifices myself, like not taking vacations and tightening my own budget to help him with his financial problems, but it never seemed to make a lasting impact. It just felt like I was enabling him. So I told him that I wasn't comfortable with him moving in again. I tried to explain that I already had a lot going on in my life, and it wouldn't be healthy for either of us if he stayed with me. I told him he needed to figure things out on his own, like I had to when I was his age. I also mentioned that I was happy to help him with finding a temporary place or assist in paying for a few nights at a motel, but I couldn't be his safety net anymore. Jack was furious. He started saying things like, "You don't care about family, and you think you're better than me." He told me I was being selfish and that I'd always look down on him because I had my life together. At this point, I was getting frustrated too. I've never looked down on him. I just don't want to keep enabling his bad decisions. He accused me of abandoning him and said that if I really cared about him, I'd help him out. It felt like all the old frustrations I'd had with him were resurfacing, and I wasn't willing to cave this time. The argument got heated, and he ended up hanging up on me. I didn't hear from him for a few days, but then I got a message from him telling me that our parents had pushed him away because of how messy things had gotten with his finances and that he had no one left to turn to. Now, my parents weren't thrilled about my decision, either. They called me, saying that family is supposed to support each other, and that Jack's situation was dire. They told me I was being too harsh, and that it's not like I had to make a huge sacrifice to let him stay. They said I had the space, and that I shouldn't be so cold toward him. I felt bad hearing this, but at the same time, I just couldn't do it anymore. I've given him so many chances, and he hasn't taken any of them seriously. I've tried to give him advice and point him in the right direction, but he always ends up back at square one. Since then, the family dynamic has been really awkward. My parents keep bringing it up, asking why I won't help him, and Jack is still angry with me. I feel like everyone's putting pressure on me to cave, but I don't want to be seen as the one who always has to fix things for him. I'm starting to wonder if I'm being too harsh, though. Should I have let him stay with me for a little while, even if I felt like it wasn't a good idea? I don't want to alienate my family, but I also don't want to keep enabling Jack. So, AITA for not letting my brother stay with me after he got evicted. AITA for confronting my sister-in-law for constantly belittling my parenting style in front of my kids. I, 35F, have 2 children, a son, 8, and a daughter, 5. My husband, Sam, 37M, and I have been married for 10 years, and his sister, Grace, 33F, has always been a part of our lives. However, for the past year, things have gotten increasingly tense between us, and I'm starting to wonder if I've been too harsh in addressing the issue, or if she really is out of line. Let me give you a bit of background. Grace is one of those people who always has an opinion on everything, and she doesn't hesitate to share it, often in the most passive-aggressive way possible. She's not malicious, but she's that person who feels the need to comment on everything, whether it's asked for or not. The issue is that she's been particularly judgmental about my parenting style, which has caused some friction between us. I'm a pretty laid-back mom. I don't overschedule my kids, and I try to give them a lot of room to explore and learn on their own. I'm firm with boundaries, but I believe in letting them make mistakes and learn from them. I don't hover. I don't believe in helicopter parenting, and I try to trust that my kids will figure things out. Grace, on the other hand, is very hands-on, very strict, and tends to micromanage everything. I understand that everyone has their own parenting style, but Grace often makes it clear that she thinks my laid-back approach is lazy or irresponsible. The problem started about a year ago when we went on a family trip to the beach. Grace came along, and things quickly escalated. My son, who was 7 at the time, was playing in the sand, and I was sitting a few feet away, chatting with Sam. Grace came over and immediately started scolding my son for not wearing enough sunscreen. She raised her voice, making sure everyone within earshot heard her, and said, "You're going to burn and get skin cancer if your mom doesn't make you wear sunscreen properly. You're not supposed to be out here without a shirt on either." I was stunned because my son had been out there for about 20 minutes, and we had applied sunscreen before we arrived. I calmly told her that we were monitoring him and that he had sunscreen on. She scoffed and said, Well, clearly you're not doing it right if you can't even put on sunscreen properly. She then proceeded to hover over him for the next 30 minutes, insisting he wear a hat and stay in the shade, even though he was fine. It was embarrassing, to be honest. My son looked uncomfortable, and I could tell he was getting frustrated with her. After that day, things didn't improve. At every family gathering, Grace would find something to nitpick. At one dinner, my daughter was eating a grilled cheese sandwich and dipping it in ketchup, which she loves. Grace made a huge deal out of it, saying, "That's way too much ketchup. You should be teaching her proper eating habits." I was taken aback because my daughter is 5, and it's just ketchup on a sandwich. But Grace looked at me with judgment in her eyes like I was ruining her future health. She went on to say, "You can't just let kids eat whatever they want. You should be teaching them moderation and healthy habits from start." I tried to ignore it at first, but I could see my kids getting uncomfortable around her. My son started to avoid her, and my daughter would make excuses not to see her when we were at family events. I started noticing that Grace would often undermine my decisions in front of the kids, like correcting them when I said something as simple as, "It's bedtime now," or "We don't act like that at the table." She'd give them an exaggerated, fake smile and say, "Oh, don't worry about that, sweetie. You're fine. You can stay up longer," or "It's okay, you don't need to listen to her, that's not a big deal." I felt like she was actively undermining my authority as a parent in front of my kids, and I wasn't sure how to address it without creating a huge family conflict. Finally, last month, things came to a head. We were at a family barbecue, and Grace started telling my son that he should be more involved in sports. She went on about how important it is for his development and how he's wasting time just playing video games. My son has no interest in sports. He's into art and reading, and that's perfectly fine. I've never pressured him into anything. Grace, however, couldn't let it go. She kept insisting that he would regret not getting into sports, that he needed to be more active, and it became uncomfortable for everyone at the table. I decided I'd had enough. I told Grace in front of everyone that I appreciated her concern, but that I was his mother and I made decisions based on what was best for him, not on what she thought was best. I told her I didn't need her constant criticism, and if she couldn't respect my parenting choices, I didn't want her to speak to my kids about it anymore. Grace was shocked and upset, and she tried to brush it off by saying, "I was just trying to help." I told her that I didn't need her help, and that if she wanted to be involved in my kids' lives, she needed to show respect for how we raised them. The rest of the family was pretty silent. Sam didn't really intervene, but I could tell he was uncomfortable. Grace ended up leaving early, and since then, there's been some tension at family gatherings. She hasn't really talked to me, and she's been cold toward me when we do interact. Some of Sam's family members have reached out to me privately to say I went too far and that I should have addressed it more calmly, but I felt like this had been going on for so long that it needed to be said. I'm starting to wonder if I overreacted. I could have just taken her aside and talked to her privately, but at the time, I was fed up with the constant criticism. AITA for confronting her in front of everyone. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.